The challenge in the arena, the air inside the arena, was heavy with heat and noise. Thousands of alien voices mixed together, creating a roar that shook the ground. Bright lights from above cut through the dust, shining on the center stage. Huge circle of hard stone surrounded by walls, taller than a human house. In the middle stood ZRKA. She was not just another alien warrior. She was a legend across 10 systems. Her body was massive, muscles bulging under thick, gray skin marked with deep scars. Her armor plates were painted with red war symbols, each one telling a story of a victory. At 330 pounds, she was almost twice the height and 3 times the width of the human standing across from her. She looked more like a moving fortress than a living creature. The alien crowd loved her. They shouted her name, stamping their heavy feet against the stands. The noise echoed like thunder. ZARKA raised one huge hand to silence them. Her deep voice rolled over the arena like a wave. "I'll crush you, human," she roared. Her tusks flashed in the light as she spoke, and her yellow eyes locked on her opponent. The human, Ethan, didn't answer. He simply stood there, arms loose at his sides, watching her with a calm that made some in the crowd frown. No fear in his eyes. No sign of doubt. Zarka tilted her head, almost amused. Was he frozen in shock? Or did he really believe he could fight her? Either way, she planned to end it quickly. The ground shook as she took her first step forward. Each step was slow and heavy, but carried the weight of a creature who had crushed war machines with her bare hands. She cracked her knuckles, smiling, as she imagined the sound of human bones breaking. Ethan didn't move. His dark hair was messy from the desert wind, and his simple combat suit was nothing compared to Zarka's thick armor. The crowd laughed. They thought this fight was over before it began. "Why do you even try, little man?" An alien in the front row shouted. "Run now, and maybe she'll let you live." Another jeered. Ethan's lips curled slightly. Not a smile, more like a warning. Still, he stayed silent. The match bell rang, a loud metallic strike that echoed across the arena. The fight had begun. Zarka didn't waste a second. She bent low and charged forward, her giant feet slamming into the stone floor. Every step made the ground tremble. She roared again, the sound so loud that it made the smaller aliens in the stands cover their ears. Ethan's heart raced, but his eyes stayed sharp. He waited until the very last moment, until Zarka's shadow completely covered him. Then he moved. A quick sidestep, smooth, fast, too fast. Zarka's massive body shot past him, smashing into the ground where he had been standing. The impact made a small crater in the stone. Dust exploded upward. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Ethan was already several steps away. Untouched. ZARKA blinked, her smile fading just a little. No one had ever dodged her first charge so cleanly. She turned slowly, studying him now. The human's breathing was steady, his posture relaxed. "Lucky," she growled, but Ethan's eyes said something else. That wasn't luck. Began to murmur. Some laughed, thinking it was still just a matter of time before Zarka won, but others felt a strange chill. Maybe this human was different. Zarka straightened to her full height and rolled her shoulders. She would not take him lightly now. She was done playing. She stomped toward him again, slower this time, testing his reaction. Ethan stepped back, keeping the distance, his eyes scanning her movements. He wasn't just fast, he was reading. Her dot from the stands, a group of alien commanders watched closely. One of them whispered, "That's no ordinary human." Another replied, "It doesn't matter. Zarka will still crush him." Zarka swung her arm at Ethan like a massive club. The air whistled as it moved. Ethan ducked low, feeling the wind brush over his head. In that moment, he saw an opening, a tiny gap in the armor near her elbow. His hand shot forward, striking the gap with precision. The hit was quick, almost too quick to see, but Zarka's arm jerked slightly from the pain. She gritted her teeth, and the crowd gasped again. No one had ever made her flinch. Ethan stepped back again, calm as before. Zarka stared at him for a long second, then her lips curled into a dangerous smile. Now she was interested. The crowd felt the change in the air. The easy win they expected was gone. The fight had just become real. Zarka crouched low, ready to leap. Her muscles tensed like steel cables, her yellow eyes locked on Ethan. The human's eyes narrowed in return. For the first time in years, Zarka wasn't thinking about victory. She was thinking about survival. The arena went silent. The next move could decide everything. The weight of the galaxy. The dust from Zarka's last move still floated in the air. When Ethan's mind flashed back to the moment that brought him here, it had all started 3 weeks ago inside the Grand Galactic Council Hall. Ethan was not a soldier, not an official champion. He was just a human engineer stationed on a trade ship. But that day, everything changed. The council chamber was a giant, circular room filled with alien leaders from dozens of worlds. They sat in high seats carved from black stone, looking down on the floor like kings. The human ambassador had just finished speaking about peace between Earth and the alien worlds. That's when a tall, thin alien with skin like cracked glass stood up. His voice echoed through the hall. Humans are weak. Their place is to serve, not to speak. Some laughed, others nodded. And then came the challenge. A public fight in the great arena to prove humanity's worth. If the human fighter lost, Earth's requests for trade and protection would be denied for 100 years. It was meant to humiliate them. It was meant to make all humans bow their heads. The alien champion was announced. Zarka, the undefeated warrior from the war clans of Gather. Everyone in the hall knew her name. Her record? 72 fights, 72 wins. All by knockout. No one from Earth wanted to face her. Even the trained soldiers hesitated. The council expected the humans to refuse, but Ethan stepped forward. Council laughed at first. He was slim, average height, not covered in muscle like Zarka. But when asked why he volunteered, he simply said, "Because someone has to show them we are not afraid." Back in the present, Ethan blinked away the memory. The hot air of the arena pressed against his face. He could feel Zarka's eyes still locked on him, her body ready to strike again. Around the arena walls, alien announcers shouted details about Zarka's past victories. One voice thundered, "She once fought under triple gravity for 2 hours without rest." Another added, "Her armor weighs more than 2 humans." The crowd cheered at these facts, but Ethan only listened quietly. Triple gravity. Heavy. Armor. That was why, in the weeks before this fight, he had trained under 4 times Earth's gravity in a hidden room aboard the human ship. Every push-up felt like lifting a mountain. Every step was like moving through wet cement. But it made him stronger, faster. His bones and muscles were ready for more than they looked. He had studied Zarka's fight recordings every night. Noticed small patterns, the way her left leg always planted before a heavy swing, the short pause she took between strikes, the tiny gap near her right elbow. Every detail mattered. Zarka began moving again, circling him like a predator. She wanted to test his limits. "You're faster than I thought," she growled, her voice deep like a drum. "But speed won't save you." Ethan didn't answer. His eyes followed her every move. Without warning, she leapt forward, faster than something her size should be able to move. Her huge body came down like a meteor, aiming to crush him beneath her weight. The stone floor cracked under the impact. Dust and debris flew into the air. But Ethan wasn't there. He had rolled to the side at the last second, feeling the heat of her shadow pass over him. The crowd's roar was deafening. They were starting to realize this human wasn't breaking. Zarka turned her head slowly, a grin forming. She stood up, towering over him again. "You can run," she said, "but you cannot hide." Ethan's hands tightened into fists. He wasn't running. He was waiting. From the stands, an alien commander whispered to his aide, "Why does he keep dodging? Why not strike?" The aide replied, "Maybe he's afraid." But the commander shook his head. "No, he's studying her." And he was right. Every dodge, every step, every moment of delay, Ethan was learning more about her speed, her range, her balance. This wasn't just a fight to survive. This was a puzzle, and every second brought him closer to the answer. Zarka swung again, her massive fist missing by inches. The force of the blow sent a shockwave through the arena, making the banners on the walls shake. Ethan slid backward, boots scraping the stone, but kept his footing. He took a deep breath. His plan was forming. But to use it, he would need her. To make one big mistake. Suddenly, Zarka's expression changed. Her grin faded, and her eyes narrowed. She bent low, preparing for another charge. But this time, Ethan felt something different. She was going to try and end it now. The crowd sensed it too. The announcers shouted over each other, predicting a final crushing blow. Ethan's heartbeat slowed, his eyes locked on her feet, her shoulders, her breathing. She charged. The ground split beneath her dot. Ethan didn't move until the very last second dot, when he finally stepped aside. He didn't just dodge. He slammed his palm into the weak point on her arm. The strike made her stumble, her knee hitting the ground. The crowd gasped in shock that it was small damage, but it was the first time in years Zarka had been forced down to one knee. She rose slowly, her tusks bared, breathing hard. And then she smiled again. The first counterattack, the crowd could hardly believe what they had just seen. Zarka, the undefeated warrior, had dropped to one knee. It wasn't much, but to the alien spectators, it was like watching a mountain tremble. Some gasped in disbelief. Others shouted insults at Ethan, calling it a lucky hit. But Ethan didn't react to the noise. His focus stayed on Zarka's every movement. Zarka rose slowly, her massive frame blocking the lights above. She rolled her shoulders, stretching her neck from side to side. Her smile was gone now. This was no longer sport. This was a fight. "You have skill, human," she growled, her deep voice echoing through the arena. "But skill without power is nothing." Ethan stayed silent, his breathing calm. He knew words wouldn't help him here. What he needed was timing. Zarka charged again, but this time she didn't come straight at him. She zigzagged, her heavy feet pounding the stone, making it harder for him to predict her path. She swung her massive arm in a wide arc. The air itself seemed to twist under the force. Ethan ducked, but the tip of her armor scraped against his shoulder. Even that small touch felt like being hit by a sledgehammer. He stumbled back, but caught himself, ignoring the sting of pain. Zarka laughed. "Not so fast now, little man." The crowd roared at her taunt, but Ethan only adjusted his stance. He waited, watching for the same patterns he had studied during his training. Then he saw it, the slight forward drop of her left shoulder before she swung her right arm. He had seen it in every recording. It was her habit, her rhythm. She lunged forward, swinging again. This time, Ethan stepped inside the arc of her swing instead of backing away. He grabbed a length of rope from the side of the arena, a leftover from earlier matches, and looped it around her arm as it passed. With a sharp pull, he tried to use her momentum against her. For a moment, the crowd gasped as Zarka's massive body tilted forward. But then, with a roar, She ripped the rope apart like it was paper. The broken pieces fell to the ground, and her eyes narrowed. "Clever," she said, "but useless." She swung again, faster this time. Ethan barely ducked in time, feeling the wind of her arm pass inches above his head. He knew one thing for certain now. Direct strength against her was impossible. Instead, he shifted to her side, heaping low, forcing her to keep turning. Every time she turned, her movements slowed just a fraction. And in those fractions, Ethan saw opportunities. The crowd began to notice. A whisper moved through the stands. "He's making her move more than she wants to. He's forcing her to waste energy." But Zarka wasn't about to let a human control the pace. She slammed her foot into the ground, sending a shockwave through the arena. Ethan's legs buckled, and he fell to one knee. In that moment, she stepped in to finish it, her massive hand reaching for his throat. But before she could grab him, Ethan shot upward, slamming his fist into the gap at her elbow joint. A spark of alien energy flared as the strike landed. Zarka let out a low grunt and stepped back. It wasn't enough to stop her, but it was enough to make her pause. From the high seats, the alien council members leaned forward. "This human, he's not just fast. He's targeting weaknesses," one said. Another replied, "If he lands a strike in the wrong place, he could actually hurt her." Back in the arena, Zarka tilted her head, looking at Ethan like he was no longer prey, but prey that could bite back. "Fine," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "I'll stop playing." She lunged again, but this time her speed doubled. Ethan barely had time to react before she was on him. Her massive hand grabbed his shoulder, lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. The crowd roared in approval. She slammed him down hard, the impact sending dust flying. Ethan rolled to his side just before her foot came down, cracking the stone where his head had been. He coughed, the taste of dust in his mouth, but he pushed himself up again. Zarka was smiling now, but it wasn't mockery. It was excitement. "You're still standing. Good. Now let's see how long you can keep it that way." Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow. His muscles burned, but his mind was clearer than ever. He had learned something new. Zarka liked long fights. She enjoyed the challenge. If he could push her into making a reckless move, that enjoyment would turn into overconfidence. The problem was, how much more could his body take? The crowd's noise faded in his mind as he focused on her again. The next move would either put him in control or end everything. The fury unleashed. The air in the arena felt heavier now. Zarka's smile had changed, no longer the grin of someone enjoying a game. This was the smile of a predator ready to kill. She cracked her neck, the sound like rocks grinding together. Her tusks glinted under the bright lights. Every step she took toward Ethan made the ground tremble. From the stands, the alien crowd sensed the shift. The casual cheers turned into a low, expectant murmur. They knew this part of the fight, the moment Zarka stopped playing. Most fighters never lasted more than a few seconds after this point. Ethan adjusted his stance, breathing deeply. His legs felt heavy from dodging, and there was a dull ache in his left shoulder where she had grabbed him earlier. But his eyes stayed locked on her. He had trained for pain. Pain meant nothing compared to losing. Without warning, Zarka lunged forward, faster than before. Her huge arms swept toward him like a wrecking ball. Ethan ducked, but the sheer force of the swing sent a shockwave that knocked him sideways. He stumbled, caught himself, but she was already on him again. Her fist came down like a hammer. Ethan rolled just in time. The impact shattered the stone floor where he had been standing. Dust and shards of rock flew into the air, scratching his face. She didn't stop. Every strike came faster, harder. Her movements were no longer slow and heavy. They were quick bursts of brutal power. It was like fighting a charging tank that could turn on a dime dot from above. The alien commentators shouted over the noise. "She's in full combat mode now. No mercy from this point forward." Ethan dodged another massive swing and jumped back to create distance. But Zarka didn't give him the space. She kicked forward, her armored legs smashing into the ground just inches from him. The force of the kick made the ground split, sending a jagged crack racing toward the arena. Wall, Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't keep dodging forever. His body would wear out before hers. He needed a way to slow her down. Then he remembered the small metal capsule tucked inside his belt, a piece of human tech he had smuggled into the fight. It wasn't a weapon that could kill her, but it could buy him seconds. And seconds were all he needed. Zarka charged again, roaring loud enough to make the arena walls shake. At the last moment, Ethan reached to his belt, pulled the capsule, and threw it to the ground. It exploded with a loud pop, releasing a thick, silver cloud that spread across the arena in seconds. The dust clung to the air like mist, blocking vision from every angle. The crowd shouted in confusion. The commentators yelled, trying to see through the haze. Even Zarka slowed for a moment, her huge head turning side to side. Inside the cloud, Ethan's heartbeat steadied. This was his moment. He moved silently, circling her, his boots making no sound on the cracked stone. He could hear her breathing, deep, heavy, but steady. She was trying to listen for him. He pulled on his special combat gloves, the ones reinforced with shockwave generators. Each punch with these would land like a battering ram. Ethan closed the distance, stepping into her blind spot. With a sharp twist of his body, he slammed his fist into the gap near her rib plate. The impact sent a dull thud through the arena. Zarka grunted, the first sound of pain she'd made all fight, but she wasn't just standing still. Her massive arm swept backward blindly, hitting Ethan's side and knocking him a few steps away. Even without seeing him, her strength was terrifying. Ethan regained his balance, keeping quiet in the fog. He needed another hit before the dust cleared. He darted in again, aiming for her shoulder joint, but this time she moved faster. Her huge hand shot out, grabbing his arm. The grip was like steel. With a roar, she spun and threw him across the arena. Ethan hit the ground hard, rolling to a stop near the cracked edge of the floor. His breath came in sharp bursts, pain flashing through his ribs. The silver fog was thinning now. Shapes began to appear. The crowd could see both fighters again. Zarka stood in the center, her chest rising and falling faster than before. She had taken damage, not much, but enough to make her realize this wasn't going to be easy. Ethan pushed himself up, his body aching, but his eyes locked on her again. He had landed blows. He had made her bleed. But he also knew she wasn't anywhere near finished. Zarka's grin returned, wider than before. "Good," she growled. "You hit harder than you. Look, now. Let's see if you can survive what comes next." The hidden strength, the silver fog, had almost vanished, leaving the arena clear once more. The crowd could see the two fighters again. Ethan standing near the cracked edge of the floor, Zarka in the center like a living mountain. Her tusks gleamed. As she grinned, her yellow eyes never leaving him. Her voice was low, dangerous. "Enough games, human. Let's end this." Ethan rolled his shoulders, ignoring the sharp ache in his ribs. Pain didn't matter. Not now. He'd trained for moments. Worse than this, moments where giving up wasn't an option. Zarka stomped forward, the ground shaking under each step. Her movements were slower than before, but still terrifying. She had taken hits, and she knew it, but it only made her more focused. Ethan's mind replayed every second of the fight so far. the weak spots he'd found, the patterns she kept repeating. But there was something else, something he had been holding back. His gloves. The shockwave generators built into them were powerful, but dangerous to his own hands if used too often. He'd been saving their full power for one single opening. Now it was time. Zarka roared and lunged again, swinging her fist down at him like a meteor. Ethan darted to the side, feeling the wind of her attack rush past his face. He moved in, close, his left hand grabbing onto the edge of her armor to keep her from turning too fast. Then he struck. His right fist slammed into her side with full power. A deep, vibrating boom echoed through the arena as the shockwave rippled through. Her armor. Zarka staggered back, a grunt of pain escaping her throat. Gasps filled the air. No one had ever made her stumble twice in a single fight. From the high seats, alien council members whispered among themselves. That wasn't just strength. That was something else. A weapon? Impossible. No weapons are allowed in the arena. Down in the ring, Zarka recovered quickly. Her smile returned, wider, sharper. You're hiding tricks, human. I like that. Ethan stayed silent, lowering his stance, ready for her next move. But inside, he felt the heat in his gloves. The shockwave strike had taken a toll on the tech. He could only use that full power once more before the gloves overloaded. Zarka's eyes narrowed. She lunged again, this time leading with her leg, a kick that could crush a wall. Ethan rolled under it, coming up behind her. He aimed for the weak point at her neck joint, but before he could strike, she spun with frightening speed. Her arm caught him across the chest, sending him flying backward. He hit the ground hard, skidding across the stone, his breath knocked out. The crowd roared at the display of force, some cheering for Zarka, others shouting for the human to get up. Ethan groaned, forcing himself to stand. He spat dust from his mouth and wiped blood from the corner of his lip. He was still in this, barely. He began circling her, making her turn again and again. Every turn cost her a little more energy. Her breaths were coming faster now, her massive chest rising and falling. She charged again, her massive frame thundering. Forward, Ethan ducked low, sliding between her legs and coming up behind her. This time, he struck the back of her knee, another known weak spot. Zarka roared in pain, her leg buckling slightly. It wasn't enough to drop her, but it slowed her. From the stands, an alien commander leaned forward. This fight should have ended long ago. Why is she slowing down? Another replied, because he's making her fight on his terms. Ethan knew they were right. He couldn't beat her with raw power, but he could make her burn her energy until she made a mistake. Zarka turned to face him, her expression now a mix of rage and excitement. You are not what I expected, she admitted. But you will still fall. She stepped forward, and Ethan noticed it. A slight limp in her right leg, barely visible. But it was there. He smiled faintly. He had found his target. The crowd could sense something was coming. The air felt tense, like the moment before a storm. Even the alien commentators went quiet for a second. Ethan's eyes locked on that injured leg. He knew what he had to do, but it would require one last, perfect strike with the full power of his gloves. If he missed, the fight was over. Zarka raised her arms and roared, ready for one final clash. Ethan crouched low, his muscles coiled like springs. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. The arena fell silent, waiting for the explosion of movement. The turn of the fight. The arena was so quiet now that Ethan could hear his own breathing. Every alien in the stands leaned forward, their eyes locked on the two fighters. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Zarka stood in the center, her massive frame glowing under the arena lights. Her tusks were bared, her chest heaving. She was ready to finish this. Ethan crouched low, his eyes never leaving her injured leg. The slight limp was still there, small, but enough. It was his only chance. Zark moved first. She let out a deafening roar and charged, the ground cracking under her weight. Her massive fists came down like falling boulders. Ethan dodged left, then right, forcing her to keep turning. Every turn made her limp more obvious. She swung again, but he ducked under her arm and slid behind her. Before she could spin, he struck the back of her knee with a sharp kick. The impact made her stumble forward, and the crowd gasped. It wasn't enough to drop her, but it slowed her, and slowing her was the first step to winning. From the high seats, an alien commander whispered. To another, the human is cutting her down piece by piece. The other replied, if she doesn't finish him now, she might not finish him at all. Zarka turned sharply, her eyes blazing with fury. You dare, she roared. She lunged at him with surprising speed for her size, but Ethan was ready. Stepped into her swing, twisting his body, and grabbed her forearm. With a burst of strength, he redirected her momentum and yanked hard. Her massive body spun off balance, giving him a clear shot at her chest plate. This was the moment. Ethan's right glove hummed with energy as he poured the last bit of power into the shockwave generator. He stepped forward and drove his fist straight into the center of her armor. The hit landed with a deep, thunderous boom. The shockwave rippled through the air, sending dust and loose stones flying. The crowd exploded in shouts and gasps. Zarka's eyes widened for a split second as the front plate of her armor cracked, a thin line running across it. It wasn't broken, but it was the first time in her career anyone had even damaged it. She stepped back, looking down at the crack, then up at him. Her expression had changed. The arrogance was gone. Now there was respect and something else. Excitement. You're strong, she said, her voice lower than before. Stronger than I thought. Ethan didn't answer. He was too busy controlling his breathing. That punch had drained him. If she kept pressing now, he might not be able to keep up, but Zarka didn't attack right away. Instead, she laughed. The deep, booming sound filled the arena. For the first time, she said, I have to fight for real. She took a deep breath, and then something happened. Her movements changed. They became sharper, faster, more dangerous. The fight was about to enter its deadliest stage. Ethan knew this was dangerous. The shockwave gloves were overheating. He could feel the heat biting into his palms. He had nothing left to rely on except his speed, his mind, and pure willpower. Zarka feinted left, then struck from the right. Ethan barely blocked with his forearm, the impact rattling his bones. She swung again, and he ducked, rolling to her side. But this time, instead of going for her leg, he grabbed the cracked chest plate. He pulled hard, using her forward momentum to rip it open slightly more. The sound of tearing metal filled the air. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The alien commentators shouted over each other. He's opening her armor. He's going for the core. Zarka growled and shoved him back. Her breathing was faster now, her chest rising and falling as the cracked plate revealed a faint glow beneath. The alien energy core that kept her species fighting at full strength. Ethan's eyes locked on that glow. It was his target. One clean hit there, and the fight would end. But he also knew it wouldn't be easy. She would protect that spot with everything she had. Zarka charged again, swinging wildly, but with purpose, forcing him to back up. Each blow came closer than the last. Ethan's boots slid across the cracked stone as he dodged, his muscles screaming in protest. Finally, she roared and leapt forward, her entire body coming down toward him in a crushing slam. Ethan rolled just far enough to avoid being pinned. dust filling his lungs as he came up to his feet. The crowd was on their feet now, screaming in every language. The fight had become something none of them would forget. Both fighters stood, breathing hard, watching each other. The next move could decide everything. Ethan's eyes stayed on the glowing core. Zarka's eyes stayed on him. And then they moved. The last move, the arena shook with the sound of thousands of alien voices. Some shouted for Zarka to crush the human once and for all. Others, now caught up in the fight, roared for Ethan to win. But in the center of the ring, the two fighters heard none of it. For them, the rest of the galaxy had disappeared. There was only the fight and the next move that would decide it. Zarka's cracked chest plate glinted under the arena lights. Beneath it, the faint glow of her alien energy core pulsed with every breath she took. It was her strength, her endurance. And now, her weakness. Ethan's gloves were scorched from overuse. His body ached, his legs felt heavy, and every breath burned his lungs. But his eyes stayed locked on that glowing target. If he hit it, the fight would end. If he missed, it would be over for him. Zarka grinned, tusks flashing. "Come, human," she growled, her voice like rolling thunder. "Let's finish this." She charged, her massive frame moving with surprising speed. The ground cracked with each step, dust rising into the air. Ethan sidestepped her first strike, then ducked under her second. He was fast, but not as fast as before. Her last punch grazed his ribs, and the pain sent a shock through his body. The crowd gasped as Ethan staggered. Zarka saw her opening and pressed forward, swinging again. This time, Ethan didn't dodge all the way. He stepped in close, letting her arm brush past him, and grabbed the edge of her cracked armor dot with all his strength. He pulled. Metal tore, sparks flew, and the chest plate split open wider, revealing the full glow of the core. The alien spectators roared in shock. Zarka's eyes widened for just a moment before narrowing again. "You think you can reach it?" She snarled. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he dropped low, avoiding her sweeping arm, and stepped into her blind spot. His gloves hummed weakly, the last bit of energy they had left. This was his final chance. Zarka spun to face him, but Ethan was already moving. He leapt forward, driving his fist toward the glowing core. For a split second, time seemed to slow. He saw her eyes widen. He felt the heat of the core on his skin. He heard the roar of the crowd turn into one long, rising note. Boom. The shockwave burst outward, rattling the arena walls. Zarka's body jerked back from the force, her arms flailing. For balance. The glow of the core flickered. Once, twice, and then dimmed. The giant alien warrior dropped to one knee, her breathing heavy, her eyes fixed on him. Silence fell over the arena. Then Zarka laughed. It was deep, booming, and filled with something unexpected pride. She pushed herself to her feet, towering over him again, but she didn't attack. Instead, she raised one massive arm and took his hand in hers, lifting it high for all to see. "This human," she roared, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena, "is my equal." The crowd erupted in chaos, cheers, whistles, even the pounding of alien drums. What was meant to be a humiliation had become a moment of respect. Up in the council seats, the alien leaders exchanged glances. They had planned to mock Earth, to make it small in the eyes of the galaxy. Instead, this fight had shown the opposite. One human had stood against the galaxy's strongest warrior and earned her respect. Ethan stood there, breathing hard, looking up at Zarka. Her grin was wide, almost friendly now. "You fight with more than muscle," she said. "You fight with heart. That is rarer than strength." Ethan just gave a tired smile. He didn't need to say anything. The fight had spoken for him. As they walked out of the arena, side by side. The noise of the crowd followed them. For the first time in history, the galaxy didn't just see humans as small, fragile creatures. They saw them as something else entirely. Warriors.